Hello students, today I will be going through chapter 7 functions and graphs on the worksheet 5, which is graphs in practical situations. So at the end of this lesson, you should be able to interpret and analyze graphs in daily life. So I'll start off with the first section, which is graphs of related quantities. This means a visual representation on how two different quantities change in relation to one another. So I'll be doing question 1 now. Let's read the question. So the graph below shows the conversion of degrees Celsius into degrees Fahrenheit. So this graph is actually a representation on the unit conversion between two different temperature scales, degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit. So let's zoom in. So if you notice, the vertical axis represents degrees Fahrenheit and the horizontal axis represents degrees Celsius. Now let's take a look at part A. The boiling point of petrol is 95 degrees Celsius. What is the boiling point of petrol in degrees Fahrenheit? So I already given you in degrees Celsius, 95 degrees. So let's take a look at the horizontal axis. So 50 is here, 100 is here. So it's in between these two values. So there are 10 small squares between 50 and 100. That means one small square will represent 5. So over here will be 60, 70, 80, 90. So 95 it's here. So what I'll do is I will draw dotted line up to meet the line given here. Dotted line up until I meet the line, and then to find the corresponding value for degrees Fahrenheit, likewise you draw dotted line to the left till you meet the vertical axis. So you can use your ruler and pencil to do so, okay? So if you notice, it's about here, okay? So likewise, for the vertical axis, 10 small squares represent 50. So one small square represents 5. So if you notice, it's slightly below 205. So I will just take the midpoint of 200 and 205, which is 202.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's move on to part B. The boiling point of ethanol is 30 degrees Fahrenheit less than the boiling point of petrol, which is already found in part A. But the question is asking you the boiling point of ethanol in degrees Celsius. So in degrees Celsius. So first step, we need to take 202.5 degrees Fahrenheit, subtract 30, and you will get 172.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Question asks you in degrees Celsius, so what we can do, let's locate 172.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is 160, 170, 180. So 172.5 degrees should be somewhere here. Slightly above 170. So what you can do, you can draw dotted line to meet the straight line, and then dotted line down to meet the horizontal axis, so that you can find the corresponding value for degrees Celsius. So over here, if you notice, it's about 3/4 to 80. So the value for this is 77.5. So the answer for part B from the graph is 77.5 degrees Celsius. So that is for part B. Now let's take a look at part C by drawing a suitable line on the graph. So we have to draw a line, find the approximate value for W given that W degrees Fahrenheit equals to W degrees Celsius. I'm going to zoom in into this equation here. W degrees Fahrenheit. So take note, Fahrenheit is represented on the vertical axis or the y-axis, while degrees Fahrenheit is the horizontal axis or also the x-axis. So if you notice, if I want degrees Fahrenheit equals to degrees Celsius, I have to draw the line of y equals to x. So you must be wondering, how do I draw the line y equals to x? For the line y equals to x, every y value, so let me just write here, every y value on line y equals to x will be equal to the x value, and it will also pass through the origin. So what I can do, I can draw a line that passes through this point 50, 50, where your x value 50 is equals to your y value of 50. I can also pass it through the origin and pass it through negative 50, negative 50. So let me just draw the line in red. So using your ruler and pencil, you can draw a straight line through these 3 points. And if you notice, this line y equals to x cuts the other line given at this particular point. So let's find the coordinates for this particular point here. You'll notice that the coordinates for this particular point is negative 40, negative 40. So this means your W here will be negative 40. So this is how you do part C. Now let's take a look at question 2. So question 2 is a graph that shows the monthly cost of electricity supplied by Sparklife. So this graph actually represents the cost versus the amount of electricity used. Cost will be represented on the vertical axis, units of electricity on the horizontal axis. So do take note, let's zoom in here first. So for the vertical axis, you notice that 5 small squares here represent $20 over here. So one small square represents $4. Whereas the horizontal axis, 800 to 1000, there are 10 small squares that represent 200 units of electricity. So one small square represents 20 units of electricity. And the line here is actually on Sparklife. Let's look at part A. Mr. Lim's electricity is supplied by Sparklife. He used 700 units of electricity in June. We have to use the graph to find the amount he was charged. So let's just zoom in to 700, which is in between 600 and 800. Draw dotted line up to meet the straight line. And then draw dotted line to the left to meet the vertical axis, so we can see the corresponding cost for 700 units of electricity. Okay, right over here. So just now I mentioned that one small square represents $4 for the vertical axis. So 124, 128, 132, 136. So the dotted lines actually meet between 132 and 136, which is 134. Let me just put an arrow here. 134. So the answer for part A will be, from the graph, $134. Now let's read part B. So now there is a new company called Power Save. So take note, the line represented here, it represents Sparklife. So now a new company, Power Save, charges a basic fee of $60 per month and then $0.112 per unit of electricity used. Let me explain what these two phrases mean, okay? So we look at Sparklife first. If you notice, for Sparklife, there is a y-intercept here, when 0 units of electricity used, I have to pay a payment. This is what we call the basic fee. So the basic fee for Spark Life is actually $16. So I'm going to write here, basic fee for Spark Life is $16. But for PowerSave, the basic fee is $60 per month. So that means the y-intercept for PowerSave will be here already. So let me just label PowerSave y-intercept. So the line will actually start from here. So because we need to draw a line to represent the cost of electricity supplied by PowerSave, we have to look at this phrase here. Per unit of electricity used, so this is cost per unit of electricity. This actually means the gradient. Why do I say so? I'm going to zoom out and go back to Spark Life. So if you notice, y-axis represents cost, x-axis represents units of electricity. So if we were to write the gradient formula for this particular graph, y-axis is cost over units of electricity, which is the x-axis. So let me recap. Gradient is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So change in the y values is actually change in the cost. Change in the x value is change in the units of electricity, which is why gradient is cost over units of electricity, which is what was mentioned here, cost per unit of electricity used. So now we know that the gradient of this line is 0.112 and the y-intercept is 60, so I can write the equation of the line straight. 0.112 is the gradient, positive 60 is the y-intercept. To locate another point for me to connect this point here to draw the line, what I can do is I can substitute x equals to 1000 to find the value of y. So when x equals to 1000, y will be equals to 0.112 times 1000 plus 60. You will get $172. So when x equals to 1000, y will be $172, which is over here. 172 is here, so you can draw dotted line all the way till you meet x equals to 1000, so over here. So I will then connect this point to this point to draw a straight line. So the orange line will be power save. This is how you do part B. Now let's move on to part C. So Mr. Lim is considering changing his supplier to PowerSave. His monthly cost of electricity will be cheaper using PowerSave if he uses more than a certain number of units of electricity. What is this number? So let's examine these two lines, okay? You'll notice that there is an intersection point. Let me just represent it in this pink color dot here. So there is an intersection point over here, represented by the pink dot of the two lines, okay? If you notice, on the left of this pink dot, PowerSave's line is above Spark Life's line. This means from 0 units of electricity to this particular point, this particular value over here, PowerSave costs more than Spark Life. On the right of this intersection, you notice that PowerSave's line is below Spark Life's line. This means from this particular units of value of units of electricity onwards, PowerSave will be cheaper than Spark Life, because take note, the Y values on this line lower than this Y values of Spark Life's line, which means the cost is actually lower. So what we need to look at, this part of the graph, PowerSave is cheaper than spark life. So let's look at this intersection point and find the corresponding x value using dotted lines down. You'll notice is 780 units of electricity. So for part C, the answer is just from graph 780. So this is how you do the entire question 2. Now let's look at question 3. So I'll give you some time to do this question. You can pause the video before you resume the video again to check your solution. So please pause the video now to try question 3 out. Okay, now I'll go through question 3, the solution for part A and part B. So for part A, how much does it cost to hire the digger for 4 days? So what do you need to do? Look at 4 days, dotted line up, dotted line across, and you'll get the value from your vertical axis. So from the graph, the corresponding cost will be $340 for 4 days. Let's look at part B. So the company charges a basic fee of $W. So this basic fee means at day 0, you already have to pay $120. So the y-intercept here will be 120, which is W. So X dollars per day. This means it is the gradient, because the gradient of this line will be cost over number of days. So to find the gradient, you can choose 2 points. Over here, I chose the y-intercept coordinates, which is 0, 120. And this point over here, which is 2, 230. I find the gradient, it will give me 55. So X will be equals to 55.